The summer and autumn of 1941 were not just a military disaster for the Soviet Union, they were an industrial apocalypse. As Nazi panzer divisions tore through the heart of the country, the USSR had to do something unprecedented in human history: pack up entire cities of factories and move them thousands of miles east to the Ural Mountains. This was the Great Migration of industry. But moving a factory isn't like moving a suitcase. Machines were lost, skilled workers joined the front lines and never returned, and critical supply chains were severed. The biggest tragedy? The loss of the Mariupol steelworks. Suddenly, the production of the legendary T-34 was under threat not by bombs, but by a lack of armor. There was plenty of iron, but not enough specialized high-strength steel. This was a steel famine, and the Red Army was starving. In this atmosphere of pure cold desperation, the Soviet High Command looked for anyone with a solution. That's when Nikolai Tsiganov stepped onto the stage. Tsiganov wasn't just some random tinkerer. He was a brilliant tank designer who had already experimented with revolutionary sloped armor on his BTSV Turtle tank. He knew that the geometry of a tank was just as important as its material. He remembered the records of the Russo-Japanese War of 1904, specifically the Siege of Port Arthur. There, an Italian engineer named Ada observed that even the most powerful Japanese 280mm howitzers struggled to destroy concrete fortifications if they were built correctly. Odawa had even proposed building concrete dreadnoughts, warships protected by massive layers of cement. The Navy laughed him out of the room because ships need buoyancy, and concrete is heavy. But Tsiganov realized that a tank doesn't need to float. Tsiganov's proposal was the T-34Zh. The Z stood for Железобетон, reinforced concrete. He argued that if the Soviet Union couldn't produce enough 45mm hardened steel plates, they could substitute them with 200mm of high-grade concrete. This wasn't just pouring sidewalk cement over a tank. Tsiganov designed a sandwich armor system. It consisted of a thin outer steel skin to handle the initial impact, a thick middle layer of concrete reinforced with a steel mesh to absorb and dissipate the energy of the shell, and an inner steel plate to prevent spalling, the lethal fragments of armor that fly inside a tank when it's hit. On paper, it was a revolution. He calculated that this concrete monster would weigh only 29 tons, making it lighter than the standard all-steel T-34, while being almost 30 times cheaper to produce. In a country that was burning through resources, the idea of a disposable but invincible tank made of sand and stone seemed like the only way to survive the Nazi onslaught. While the concrete tank was being debated in the design bureaus, the Russian winter of 1941 arrived with a vengeance. Temperatures plummeted to minus 40 degrees, turning grease into glue and steel into glass. It was a nightmare for logistics, but for the innovators at the Stalin Military Academy, it was an opportunity. They realized that in the deep freeze of the Eastern Front, they had access to a building material that was free, abundant, and surprisingly strong: ice. But ordinary ice is brittle. It shatters like a mirror when hit by a bullet. To solve this, they looked at the principles of composite materials and created something called idle beton, or ice concrete. This was a bizarre, brilliant mixture of gravel, sand, and wood sawdust, all bound together by frozen water. The science behind it was actually solid. The sawdust acted as a structural fiber, much like the rebar in modern skyscrapers. It created a fibrous network within the ice that prevented cracks from spreading. When a high-velocity German shell hit this frozen armor, it didn't just pierce through. Instead, the gravel and sand acted as disruptors, shattering the hardened tungsten or steel tip of the projectile, while the frozen sawdust mass absorbed the kinetic energy. It was a low-tech version of modern composite armor used on the M1 Abrams or the Challenger 2. The strategic beauty of ice concrete was that it allowed for field modifications. You didn't need a massive factory or a blast furnace. A tank crew standing in the middle of a frozen forest near Moscow could build a simple wooden formwork around their T-34. They would fill the gap with whatever they could find: sawdust from a nearby sawmill, rocks from a riverbed, and then just pour buckets of water over it. In an hour, the frost would finish the job. They actually ran tests at the firing ranges, shooting at these ice tanks with the German 75mm Pak-40, the most feared anti-tank gun of the era. The results were shocking. From a distance of just 300 meters, the shells would smash into the ice concrete, creating a spectacular explosion of frozen debris, but the main steel hull of the T-34 remained untouched. The ice was literally eating the shells. It gave the tankers a psychological edge, knowing that their wooden box of frozen slush was actually a shield that could save their lives against the might of the Wehrmacht. As 1942 progressed, the dreams of a concrete army began to collide with the brutal reality of mechanical engineering. On the testing grounds, the major flaw of the T-34Zh became apparent: weight distribution. While the theoretical model Ziganov proposed was light, the practical application was a disaster. To give a standard T-34 enough concrete protection to survive 75mm shells, engineers had to bolt on massive, heavy blocks that added anywhere from 4 to 13 extra tons to the chassis. The T-34 was designed to be a cavalry tank, fast, nimble, and able to outflank the enemy. But a T-34 with 10 tons of concrete on its back was no longer a cavalryman. It was a turtle. The V2 diesel engine, though legendary, began to overheat. The suspension springs snapped under the pressure, and the rubber tires on the road wheels disintegrated. Furthermore, the one-hit problem was real. While concrete was great at stopping the first shell, the impact would create a massive shatter zone. The second shell hitting the same area would find no resistance and sail right through the hull. Unlike steel, which bends and absorbs, concrete just crumbles. By the summer of 1942, the industrial situation in the USSR began to stabilize. The Tankograd complex in Chelyabinsk was now operating at full capacity, churning out hundreds of all-steel T-34s every week. The steel famine was being won by the sheer grit of the Soviet workers. With plenty of high-quality armor plate now available, the High Command realized that a fast tank with 45mm of steel was much more valuable than a slow concrete bunker that would get stuck in the first mud pit it encountered. The project was officially shuttered in late 1942. The T-34Zh never saw mass production, and the ice tanks remained a desperate field experiment. Nikolai Ziganov, the visionary who fought so hard to save his country with sand and ice, didn't survive to see the end of the war. He continued to serve with distinction in the tank forces, but he was killed in action in January 1945, just as the Red Army was pushing into Germany. He died at the age of 37, leaving behind a legacy of brilliant, if sometimes absurd, innovations. The story of the concrete T-34 is more than just a footnote. It's a testament to the absolute limits of human ingenuity. It shows that when a nation is fighting for its very existence, even the most basic materials, sand, water, and wood, can be transformed into a shield against tyranny. It was a project born of despair, but fueled by the indestructible will to win.